Hi there, I am the Reverend Danny Crosby, a Unitarian minister serving congregations in Altrincham and in Urmston in the northwest of England. And I offer this devotion as a balm for the heart, for the mind, for the spirit and for the soul. It is titled, Love and Fear. Is the sky falling in? I was out the other morning walking with Molly in the local park. She ran around and as we were kind of walking around, running around, having a lovely time together, a couple of women with dogs called out to me. They had another dog with them actually. They asked me, do you know whose this dog is? They had two dogs of their own and there was another dog with them too. One of them seemed to be trying to lure the dog onto her lead, the lead of her dog, with some dog treats. But the dog wouldn't let her. He'd take the treats, but he wouldn't get on the lead. They said that they found the dog wandering around the tennis courts and they thought that it belonged to an old man. They seemed quite fraught and thought that the old man must have had an accident. That's what they said. They didn't know what to do. They thought, we need to report this missing dog. The man had an accident. Is it just lost? It's got a collar, but I can't read the tag on the collar. As we were talking, other people passed by and again the women asked them if they recognised the dog. One or two agreed that it did look like a dog that belonged to an old man. Folk began milling round and getting involved in all the commotion. It was quite a commotion right there in the middle of the park early in the morning. After a few moments, one of the women began to call the local vets and the RSPCA, determined that something terrible must have happened and that the dog needed to be rescued. Again, more people gathered round. A few moments later, two other women with prams and with one dog slowly sauntered down the park towards us. I got involved at this point and asked them if they knew the dog in question, and one of them calmly said, yes, it is mine. I've been calling him and wondered why he didn't come running. He usually do. I wondered what on earth was going on down there. So it seems the dog just likes to wander in the park, doing his own thing, but in this safe, friendly park. Lots of dogs do. Molly does it all the time. She never leaves the park, but she likes to run around and do what dogs do. And these two people also knew the old man in question, said yes, their dog does look quite a bit like his dog. Seems the whole thing had got completely out of hand. Panic had set in. A simple situation had been blown out of all proportion. The dog was fine, and yet fear and anxiety had begun to spread from seemingly one little, like an acorn on the head, or in this case, one little dog who'd just like to do his own thing sometimes. It was very happy and safe. A bit like I used to do as a child. I would wander off and cause panic, but I was quite happy in my own little world. Now, the whole incident reminded me of that classic children's story. I had a Ladybird book version of it, Chicken Licken. The story of an acorn falling on the chicken's head, which convinces the chicken that the sky is falling in. It's the end of the world. The chicken panics and decides that he must inform the king. Now there are many versions of this story and it goes by some different names actually. The version I'm going to share with you now actually, as I love to tell this story, although I prefer to have it when there's an audience to interplay with. But this version is primarily based on a collection compiled by the American Unitarian minister Edward Everett Hale. He was quite a figure in his time and had a great influence on the great Helen Keller actually during her childhood. There's a lovely picture of them together. And he's probably best known for a rather famous quotation. He said, I am only one, but I am one. I cannot do everything, but I can do something. And because I cannot do everything, I will not refuse to do the something that I can do. Anyhow, here's the story of Chicken Licken. Chicken Licken. Depends how you pronounce it really. As Chicken Licken was going one day to the wood, whack! An acorn fell from a tree on his head. Goodness Gracious goodness me, said Chicken Licken. The sky must have fallen. I must go and tell the king. So Chicken Licken turned back and met Henny Lenny. Well, Henny Lenny, where are you going? Said he. I'm going to the wood, said she. Oh, Henny Lenny, don't go, said he, for I was going and the sky fell onto my head, and I'm going to tell the king. So Henny Lenny turned back with Chicken Licken and followed him. And on the way they met Cocky Locky. Well, Cocky Locky, where are you going? Said he. I'm going to the wood, said he. Then Henny Lenny said, oh, Cocky Locky, don't go, for I was going and I met Chicken Licken, and Chicken Licken had been at the wood, and the sky had fallen onto his head, and we're going to tell the king. So Cocky Locky turned back, and they met Ducky Lucky. Well, Ducky Lucky, where are you going? And Ducky Lucky said, I'm going to the wood. Then Cocky Locky said, oh, Ducky Lucky, don't go, for I was going and I met Henny Lenny, and Henny Lenny met Chicken Licken, and Chicken Licken had been at the wood and the sky had fallen onto his head, and we're going to tell the king. So Ducky Lucky turned back and met Drakey Lakey. Well, Drakey Lakey, where are you going? And Drakey Lakey said, well, I'm going to the wood. Then Ducky Lucky said, oh, Drakey Lakey, don't go, for I was going and I met Cocky Locky, and Cocky Locky met Henny Lenny, and Henny Lenny met Chicken Licken, and Chicken Licken had been to the wood, and the sky had fallen on his head, and we are going to tell the king. So Drakey Lakey turned back and met, can you guess, Goosey Lucy. Well, Goosey Lucy, where are you going? And Goosey Lucy said, I'm going to the wood. You know by now, don't you? And then Drakey Lakey said, oh, Goosey Lucy, don't go, for I was going and I met Ducky Lucky, and Ducky Lucky met Cocky Locky, and Cocky Locky met Henny Lenny, and Henny Lenny met Chicken Licken, and Chicken Licken had been at the wood, and the sky had fallen onto his head, and we're going to tell the king. So Goosey Lucy turned back and met Gandily Landily. Well, Gandily Landily, where are you going? And Gandily Landily said, I'm going to the wood. Then Goosey Lucy said, oh, Gandily Landily, don't go, for I was going and I met Drakey Lakey, and Drakey Lakey met Ducky Lucky, and Ducky Lucky met Cocky Locky, and Cocky Locky met Henny Lenny, and Henny Lenny met Chicken Licken, and Chicken Licken had been at the wood, and the sky had fallen on his head, and we're going to tell the king. So Gandily Landily turned back and met Turkey Lurkey. You knew that, didn't you? Well, Turkey Lurkey, where are you going? And Turkey Lurkey said, I'm going to the wood. Then Gandily Landily said, oh, Turkey Lurkey, don't go, for I was going and I met Goosey Lucy, and Goosey Lucy met Drakey Lakey, and Drakey Lakey met Ducky Lucky, and Ducky Lucky met Cocky Locky, and Cocky Locky met Henny Lenny, and Henny Lenny met Chicken Licken, and Chicken Licken had been at the wood, and the sky had fallen onto his head, and we're going to tell the king. So Turkey Lurkey turned back and walked with Gandily Landily, Goosey Lucy, Drakey Lakey, Ducky Lucky, Cocky Locky, Henny Lenny, and Chicken Licken. And as they were going along, they met Foxy Loxy. And Foxy Loxy said, where are you going? And they said, Chicken Licken went to the wood, and the sky fell onto his head, and we're going to tell the king. And Foxy Loxy said, "Come along with me, and I will show you the way." But guess what? He wasn't very honest, you know. Foxy Loxy took him into his fox's hole, and he and his young uns soon were ate up poor Chicken Licken and Henny Lenny and Cocky Locky and Ducky Lucky and Drakey Lakey and Goosey Lucy and Gandly Landly and Turkey Lurkey. And none of them saw the king, and none of them told the king that the sky had fallen in. So what's the moral of this tale? Well, it shows just how easy it is for any of us to get caught up in irrational fear, especially the fear of someone else, as it becomes infectious, really. It's important to examine the evidence of our own senses, or you could get caught up in someone else's fear. Just like half the park did the other day, including me a little bit. You know, I was wondering what the heck was going on. Now, of course, the fear came from genuine human concern and care, but still the fear was completely unfounded. And I wonder how often we see panic flow from the acorns of life. Every day an acorn can fall on someone's head, it probably does. But just because an acorn falls on your head, it does not mean that the sky is falling in and that the end of the world is nigh. It just means an acorn's fallen on your head. So don't panic. And yet we feel so much fear in life at times. Fear is a very powerful emotion. It has the power to inhibit, but it also has the power to allure, to draw us in. And fear comes in many, many forms. Forrest Church, my great hero, identified 5 different types of fear, which he associated with the body, with the intellect, with the conscience, with the emotions, and with the soul. The 5 being, though the first being fright. And he saw fright as being centred in the body, which is a kind of, I guess, instinctive fear. It's a response. It's designed actually to protect us from danger. It's that feeling that makes us jump, I suppose, when we watch a horror film, or the thing that gets our blood pumping and awakens our senses and allows us to respond to physical danger. Someone cuts you up in the car, or a loud noise. The second form is worry, which is centred in the intellect. This is a fear that is produced by our worst imaginings that are often not real and can be blown out of all reasonable proportions. A bit like what happened in the park. It's Mark Twain, shortly before he died, said, "I am an old man and I have known a great many troubles, but most of them never happened." But still we worry. The third type of fear is guilt, which is centred in the conscience. This is a fear of being caught out or found out due to something that we have done in our pasts. It's a fear we often carry with us and can be projected into so much of our lives. It's the feeling that can come over us, I guess, if we pass through security in an airport. Think about that feeling of guilt when you haven't done anything. There's no reason to feel such feelings, or when you walk through in and out of a shop and you go through the security sensors and you have this fear that you're going to get caught for stealing something and you haven't stolen anything, but it can really get the heart going. The fourth form of fear is insecurity, centred in the emotions. This is a fear prompted by feelings of inadequacy. It's a fear that breeds a need to seek approval from others. It's a form of narcissism and forms deep self-consciousness, which makes us unconscious to the life we live in, to life itself. And the fifth, and perhaps the worst form of fear, is dread, which is centred in our soul. A fear that is generated by life's uncertainty. In this book, Freedom from Fear, Forrest Church wrote, "Man himself produces dread," wrote the Christian philosopher Søren Kierkegaard. We manufacture it whenever we attempt to control things over which we hold no final authority. We reduce life to a battleground where we struggle against insurmountable odds. Fearing every transition from certainty to uncertainty, we devote our full energy to protecting ourselves against loss. Dread is the opposite of trust. The more we dread death and dying, the more alarming life and living turn out to be. Fear has many faces. All the faces are powerful in their own way. And each and every one of us experience each type of fear at different times in our lives, no doubt. Just think about the last week of your life. What fear has been present? What type of fear? Children often fear the dark, and many people fear the unknown, the unseen, the uncertain. But the truth about life is that it pretty much is uncertain. And if I've learned anything in my life, I've learned that it's vital to accept the uncertainty of life, to surrender to this uncertainty. And through surrendering, you find the courage to simply live and truly be yourself, and to discover a real faith in life once again. I was thinking of the fear of the dark that often children have, or fear of the unknown, of what's at the other side of things. And it reminded me of a story I heard many, many years ago, and I'd like to share that story with you now. It's another story. I'm sorry for those that don't like stories. But you wouldn't be listening to me if you didn't like stories, would you? I'm full of stories. Life's always about a story. De Mello said it's the shortest difference between the human being and the truth is a story. So here's another one. I once heard a story of a young boy who lived with his parents on a farm. His job every afternoon was to fetch the afternoon paper so that his dad could read after a long day's work while eating his tea. Now, one November day, the boy forgot to fetch the paper, and by now it's just starting to turn dark. It turned 4 o'clock, nearly tea time, and his mum noticed that he hadn't fetched the paper. So she asked her son if he would go get the paper for his dad. 20 minutes passed, still no paper. She asked him again. 10 minutes later, still no paper. So she asked him once again. This went on until the mum completely lost her temper with the boy and shouted at the boy, "Will you get your dad's paper?" At which point, the boy burst into tears. His mother, realising that something actually really was wrong, went to the boy, who was unconsolable by now. After a while, she calmed him down and asked him what on earth was wrong. He began to explain that all of his life he'd been afraid of the dark, but he was too afraid to let his parents know his fear. His mother soothed him and then asked, "Now you are a boy of faith, and you believe in God. You believe that God is in you and with you, that God is in everything, even the dark." The boy nodded, and then his mother said, "There is no reason then to fear the dark, for God is in the dark, and God can do anything. Now be a good lad and go and get your dad's paper." At this, the boy looked up at his mum smilingly, and he went to the door. He opened the door and confidently shouted out, "God, will you get my dad's paper for me, please?" Sadly, his dad didn't get the paper that night. I recall a passage from Mark's Gospel of Jesus and his disciples being caught up in a storm. It's a section that follows many verses depicting Jesus speaking in different parables at the riverbank, parables about faith and the kingdom of God. After Jesus has finished preaching, he and his disciples cross the waters and are caught in a storm. The disciples become afraid for their lives, and they waken Jesus, who calms the seas. And he then rebukes his disciples with the following words: "Why are you afraid? Have you still no faith? It seems they were afraid because they lacked courage and that they lacked faith in life itself. And it seems to me that living in this kind of fear is the very thing that so often reduces our lives or can send us into a panic over very little things at times if we kind of live from that kind of faithless feeling towards life. Fear is so powerful emotion that it can control so much of our lives. But how? How do we overcome such feelings of fear, this feeling of dread, this feeling that there's something wrong with ourselves or with life itself? Well, I've heard it said that the key to overcoming fear is to live by courage, to live by heart. And it's said that courage in many ways is the essence of life. Maybe courage is our daily bread itself. Anne Nin once said, life shrinks or expands in proportion to one's courage. I am sure we can all think of moments when our lives have either expanded or shrunk in proportion to our courage. Courage itself comes from the French word corps, meaning heart. So to have courage is to have strength of heart. Courage is a consistent and a sustaining love. It is a spiritual energy that sustains us in sickness and in health, in loss or disappointment. Some say there are only really two emotions in life, one being fear and one being love. Now, I do not believe that to feel the emotion of fear is to lack love or courage or even faith. That's to feel the emotion. That's said to be ruled by the emotion of fear, to become paralysed by fear. That might mean a lack of faith, but not to feel it. It's in what we do, I guess, that's the faith. How often in life do we say no to life because we have become paralysed by fear? How often do we expect someone else to do what we can do ourselves because of our fear? How often do we create troubles for ourselves and others because our fear-led imaginations have created a scenario that probably does not exist, like those women in the park? For me, faith is all about having the courage to be all that we can be and do what we can do in love and service for life itself, for the people in our lives and for God, however we understand God. But it's also about taking and seeing life in all that it is, good and bad and everything in between. Life shrinks or expands in proportion to the size of our heart. Life shrinks or expands in service to life itself. It's about heart. It's about courage. It's about being all that we can be in this world. To have courage is to have strength of heart and to live from our hearts in our ordinary everyday activities. Courage is a way of living and breathing. It's about living openly and vulnerably in the world. Courage comes in those ordinary acts of love as we walk slowly through life. It is courage that allows us to learn that even when life has betrayed us, which it does, love is still present there. If we would but live faithfully, if we would but seek love and be love and give love, live in love. It's courage that allows us to stay open to life even when the storms are really blowing. It is courage that is formed in the heart. It is courage that is the ultimate act of faith. It is courage that keeps us open to life so that we can live in love and service. Fear is a powerful emotion. We all feel it at times. The fright instinct is there. It is vital for our survival. But other forms of fear are less helpful, particularly those that we create from within ourselves. Responding in fright from an external thing is appropriate, but the fear that we just create from our own imaginations can be so destructive and debilitating. And it can spiral out of control and lead to problems for ourselves and others, just like it did in the cautionary tale of Chicken Licken or in the park the other day. So, the next time you feel an acorn falls on your head, do not assume that it's a sign that the end of the world is nigh. It may just be an acorn falling from a tree, a sign of the natural change and the flow of life itself. It's a sign of life. Nothing to fear there. Nothing to fear here. Amen. I'm going to end with some final words of blessing. You know, we need to bless more, and we can all bless. And we bless by giving ourselves wholeheartedly to life, to live in love and courage. So let's return to life blessed by this time of renewal and connection. Walk lightly, that you see the life that is below your feet. Feel it in your soles and your toes. Spread your arms as if you had wings and could dance through the air. Feel the joy of the breath in your lungs and the fire in your heart. Live to love and be a blessing to this earth and the children of it. And may the love of God be with us all, and may that love be with us in all that we feel, in all that we think, in all that we say, in all that we do. Go in love, go in peace. Amen.